Dian Babana Gemarada, Bajuri Gemarua, Gadigal Nagara. On behalf of Metro, local Aboriginal Land Council as the CEO, it's a great honour and privilege as the custodians and representative body of the area you're gathering tonight to welcome you to the Australian Armenian Community's annual Gala fundraiser. It's more privileged than honoured to open in the language of the Gadigal people, and I thank Paddy Garang for her gift she provides to us all that we cherish today. The words I open up with simply translate to women, men, friends, comrades. G'day, you're on Gadigal country. You're standing what is next to what is known as Hyde Park today. It's an area that for the Gadigal provided their permanent water source and of course thus became the tank stream of the colony. I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal, their neighbours, the Wongals, the Wallamaddigals, the Burramaddigals, the Bidjigals, the Gamaragals, the Ganagals, the Garrigals and the many more of what we colloquially call the Gal group, but as Paddy Garang knows them and always acknowledge them and always will be, the Eora people. My local land council extends indeed not just from Eora country but all the way to Wonnarua country, out to Wiradjuri country. You see, we are the first land council of Australia. Very special things have occurred here on Gadigal country, be it the resistance that was shown by Colby as a Gadigal, be it his neighbours, Mosquito as a Gamaragal, or the Bidjigal warrior Pemulwuy you've probably heard about. I acknowledge but also that close by in Woolloomooloo, in an area that we call Wallara, local government area today, that there were Aboriginal communities remaining right up to the 1860s, living permanently, enjoying life, serenity. I also acknowledge that it's the Gadigal people who led our rights agendas. So beautifully here in 1909, our community hosted and gave a bed to a man known as Jack Johnson. They say he could punch a little bit. Of course, what I'm jokingly talking about is our role in establishing the first coloured society on earth here on 1909 in Surrey Hills. Thereabouts in the 1920s, we established progressive societies, activist bodies that called for rights for our people. The man I mentioned earlier, Mr Maynard, was standing on the soapbox at the Domain, petitioning for our rights, calling for the first people to have rights. Thereafter in 1938, just to stroll down the road again from here, or maybe a little scoot like me in an electric scooter, at 150 Elizabeth Street down the road in 1938, on the 26th of January, our people defied the laws of Australia, which decried we could not walk the street, we could not walk freely, we could not gather, and we went on to host, hold and convene what's known as the Day of Mourning. The Day of Mourning was our declaration that it's not a celebration, the 26th of January. It's not a day our people celebrate. We commemorate, we honour, we mourn for what we have endured, suffered and lost. But in that 1938 Day of Mourning, they produced the first known 10-point plan on earth for human rights. A very proud moment for my people, and indeed I hope that the rest of the world will find out more about my old people's endeavours, that we established a Charter of Rights, simply declaring we can be us, practice our culture, speak our language as I opened, because all these things were forbidden from us. In 1938 we were not meant to be on the street, but I hope you will see photos that proudly displays my old people, dressed immaculately, formally, standing in silent protest against the 26th of January's celebrations for the 150th anniversary of the colony. That took place just down the road, ironically. But what it's led to is an irreversible agenda of rights being achieved. Me standing here today representing the first local land council of Australia. Its incarnation then was Redfern Land Council, where in the 1970s on Gadigal country we seen the first Aboriginal community services. We established our first own legal service in 1972. Thereafter our own medical service, our own children's services, housing companies, and all the different forms of community services you see today. And we acknowledge that's become the standard right across all First Nations, from the Tiwi to Tasmania or the Palawa, as we acknowledge them. I'd like to acknowledge all the esteemed elders who fought before me and the shoulders upon whom I stand today. For without their leadership, we wouldn't have our council today, chipping away hopefully one day to do what Martin Fernando did from here in Woolloomooloo as a Gadigal man. In 1930, he petitioned, knocked on the door of the palace, Buckingham Palace, wore a suit embezzled with skeletons, asked for a meeting with the king. He was naturally denied. In fact, he was ejected and sent to Italy. But what he was asking for was a fair go and the opportunity for his people, my people, to be treated like equal human beings. And when we look at the leadership that Martin Fernando displayed in 1930 to leave the shores of Woolloomooloo and rock up to Buckingham Palace and knock on the door, we can't help but say anything's achievable. I note that in 1988, elders of this community, led by Paul Coe, certainly a late great Harry Penrith, Burnham, stuck a flag in the cliffs of Dover to commemorate the 200th arrival of the British here in our country. But now I'd like to say to you is, I hope you have a deadly closing out of what's been our massive week known as NAIDOC. I'm very thankful Serene mentioned that this week we've been out celebrating our National Aboriginal Week. The irony is that in 1938 we elected our first ever elected person. For those who don't know our culture, you might be shocked. We're not. Her name was Auntie Pearl Gibbs, nee Brown. We've always been matriarchs, led by matriarchs. We follow matriarchs, 90% of the First Nations of this great land. Auntie Pearl Gibbs established what was known as Aborigines Day. That's also known today as Aboriginal Day. And that, of course, was Friday the 13th, November the 13th, Black Friday for the irony this year, amongst all of the COVID rearrangements. But I continue to acknowledge the strength and wisdom of my old people. But I've got to acknowledge that in 1938 we couldn't get a venue. We were denied access to the Town Hall of Sydney. We were denied every gentleman's club, the Tattersalls Club and every other club. The only people that would let us in was what we know to be the true Australians that we love and share today, those who bring culture. I'm talking about the Germans, the Greeks, the Italians, the Mandarin, because it was variously known in the Australia Hall as the German Club, the Italian Club, the Greek Hellenic Club, the Mandarin Club. It was the place where cultured people could practice their culture, speak their language, shake a leg, do whatever, maybe dance a jig like my Irish father, whatever you do. But it was in that hall that we were allowed access that we come up with our plan. And that's why I'm here tonight to celebrate with you the Armenian Society of Australia, your culture, one of the oldest human cultures on earth. You've fought, you've struggled, you've maintained through those trying to take away your lands, your identity, your culture and your language. And I hope you can celebrate that here on our country, be it Koori country, Gadigal country, Murri, Guri, Noongar, Nunga, Wongai, whatever the cultural lands you may walk across on what we call Australia. I welcome you all and I enjoy you all, and no better person than for us, your number one representative, asking to include us in the anthem on Black Friday. What a deadly thing. The first time an Australian elected leader, while still in the office, actually asked to include us. And I acknowledge there's been many past leaders who, when they retire, develop consciousness and want to openly talk about the plight and why they didn't pay rent and why they won't be honourable to us and treat us as human beings. Maybe stop kidnapping our children and indoctrinating them and assimilating them. But no, the most deadly leader we've ever experienced just happens to be an Armenian. So I want to pay my respects to Gladys, thank her for starting a conversation that no one's done in this country about including us in the most pointed cultural thing of a country that is their anthem. So, Vajuri Gamarua, may you all have a good day, indeed have a deadly night at your fundraiser.